Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to put to rest another liberal axiom, namely anthropogenic global warming. Global warming alarmists like James Hansen, Robert Kennedy Jr., Al Gore, and other luminaries struggling for relevance such as John Francois Kerry, and Barbara Boxer tell us that man is destroying the planet with all these evil inventions. We're polluting the planet with massive amounts of CO2 and soon we'll reach a tipping point. Of course, they've been telling us we have 10 years to solve the problem for about 15 years, but sometime soon we're all going to die. Let's not forget that water vapor is the most prevalent and effective greenhouse gas. How we'd regulate that, even if man is responsible for global warming, is beyond me. Earth has been subjected to catastrophic climatological catastrophes many times in the distant past, long before the Industrial Revolution. The alarmists will tell us it's much worse now, but how can one infer that when Earth has gone through all this and more? They can't, but like a dog returning to its vomit, they continue with their doomsaying. I'll give you a few examples here, and I'll have the relevant links off to the right side, and it will require a lot of reading, and I know for you leftists that's tough because it's a lot tougher than sitting in on a 5-minute spot in the evening news while Katie Couric pontificates to the ignorant masses. But it's worth a try. Give it a shot, guys. Peter Chilik of the Los Alamos National Laboratory states concerning surface air temperatures this was in Climatic Change, March 2004, surface air temperatures of Greenland. The Greenland surface air temperature trends over the past 50 years do not show persistent warming, in contrast to the global average surface air temperatures. The Greenland coastal station temperature trends over the second half of the past century generally exhibit a cooling tendency with superimposed decadal scale oscillations related to the dynamic of North Atlantic Oscillation atmospheric circulation. At the Greenland Ice Sheet Summit, the temperature record shows a decrease in the summer average temperature at the rate of about 2.2 degrees centigrade per decade, suggesting that the Greenland ice sheet at high elevations does not follow the global warming trend either. A significant and rapid temperature increase was observed at all Greenland stations between 1920 and 1930. What caused that? Did the Vikings come back and start driving around SUVs? The average annual temperature rose between 2 and 4 degrees centigrade in less than 10 years. Since the change in anthropogenic production of greenhouse gases at that time was considerably lower than today, this rapid temperature increase suggests a large natural variability of the regional climate. Oh, but it's man's fault. But wait, folks, there's more. In a 2004 issue of Geophysical Research Letters, researchers used sea ice concentration data from the Nimbus 7 satellite and the spatial sensor microwave imager on several defense meteorological satellites to develop a quality-controlled history of Antarctic sea ice variability during the solar cycle 1979 to 2002. During this time, El Niño southern oscillation events were also observed. They report that the extent of Antarctic sea ice, that's grid boxes covering at least 15% sea ice concentrations, those had increased by 4,801 kilometers squared per year, and the cumulative ocean area covered by at least 15% ice concentrations has increased even more rapidly. That went up to 13,295 square kilometers per year. The authors also note that areas of 15, 20, and 30% ice concentrations are increasing as well, and they exceed the 95% confidence level. So down in Antarctica, where we're supposed to see the greatest effects of anthropogenic global warming, we're not seeing that. The ice is actually increasing. So if anthropogenic global warming was true, or natural global warming on a massive scale, we would see it in Antarctica, but we're not. Doesn't sound like we're seeing catastrophic events in the Antarctic. What about the Greenland ice cap? Ice core samples near the summit of the Greenland ice cap indicate temperatures during the medieval warm period, 800 to 1100, were about 1 degree centigrade warmer than those of the current warm period. This was published in the Journal of Quaternary Science. The same can be said of the southern region of the Greenland ice cap, it was learned that temperatures during the medieval warm period peaked and hovered around negative 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit for centuries between 800 and 1100 AD. Temperatures of the current warm period also peaked at around the same temperature, but only for a few short decades in the early 1900s. Presently, temperatures based upon this method are about 1.5 degrees centigrade colder than the peak warmth of medieval times. So we see massive, we saw a lot of climate change in the Greenland ice cap long before man invented the SUV, or the first oil refinery, or the first evil Walmart. CO2 is another item leftists crow about often, but is it the boogeyman they make it out to be? Quite the contrary. A recent study published in Agriculture, Ecosystems, and Environment, potatoes were grown in open-top chambers, some at ambient CO2 levels and some at elevated ambient plus 350 parts per million levels. What the authors found was the net photosynthetic rates of the potatoes in the elevated CO2 environment were 53% greater than those in the ambient environment. Furthermore, tuber biomass was 36% greater in the chambers with elevated levels of CO2. Those taters did a lot better in a higher CO2 level. It was beneficial. It's not toxic. These idiots want to make it sound like something, when you breathe, when you exhale, the CO2 levels are going to kill us. Plants love it. The taters did better, and then we have this too. Another study published in Agricultural and Forest Meteorology, rice plants exposed to higher CO2 levels had reduced stomatal conductance by 13% in upper leaves and by 40% in lower leaves at the panicle initiation stage. After the initial stage, however, the reduction decreased. Moreover, as conditions got drier, the pores in the epidermis of the leaves closed more, and the total water used by the crop was 268.7 millimeters in the ambient CO2 treatment and 246.7 millimeters in the elevated CO2 treatment. They responded better to drier conditions. They used less water. In other words, in a heightened CO2 environment, these plants retained more moisture and responded better in drier conditions. A richer CO2 level also increased total plant biomass by 9.1%. The net results show us that an enriched CO2 environment was beneficial to rice production in Japan. CO2 is not the boogeyman these idiots make it out to be. It's very beneficial. There you have it, folks, a sampling of the data you won't get on the Evening Snooze, Daily Kos, or reading Seth Borenstein's Associated Press rag. If you want generalized kitty-level argumentation without hard data, go to those sources. If you want the truth, it requires a little digging, but it's worth it. So you won't hear that on the nightly news with Katie Couric. You won't hear Robert Kennedy Jr. talking about that when he's up in his bully pulpit whining about Holocaust deniers and climate change deniers. Robert Kennedy Jr., James Hansen, Al Gore, they're all empty suits. The hard data does not indicate that man is influencing the planet greatly. CO2 is not the boogeyman they make it out to be. Basically, if I may, I think this is all about global control. It's all about the government regulating this and regulating that, because CO2 emissions in Cleveland, Ohio now affect people in Paris and in Bhutan, and we've got to curb that. The U.S. we're consuming too much. The evil U.S. is killing the planet, and we're harming these third world countries. We need a global solution. Welcome to the New World Order.